Crafter! Today we're going to be taking these 6 basic picture frames from the dollar store and turning them into this beautiful lantern that is perfect for fall and can be easily adapted for winter and Christmas as well. You don't need a lot of materials or supplies for this project, but it's super easy to customize for whatever season and look you want. To start, you'll need to pick 4 frames for the body of your lantern. I went with these 5x7 frames with the cute puppers in them, and the frame itself is obviously bigger than 5x7 because it's got this inset piece. Then you will need 2 smaller frames for the roof of this lantern. So I got these 4x6 frames with this adorable little girl. I love her smile, it's very contagious. So when you're deciding on which frames to buy, you want to make sure that one side is the same width as the top of your big frame, and that the other side goes more than halfway across the top side of the big frame. So let's get these opened up. And while I'm opening these, I've also got my glue gun heating up. Now you don't have to use hot glue to assemble yours. You could use super glue or something like an E6000 glue. I'm going with the hot glue because I think it will give me the best hold with the least effort. For those of you watching, also let me know in the comments below if I'm alone in this or not, but do you guys buy picture frames? But if you like the picture that's already in it, you kind of like the picture frame more. Like obviously I'm not leaving these pictures in here, but when it has a nice picture in it, I always like the frame more. Let me know in the comments if I'm alone in that or if you understand what I'm talking about. So now that our picture frames are opened up, we need to take everything except for the glass out of the picture frames. You may also want to clean the glass off because sometimes they get a little dusty and they get the cardboard lint on them from just being at the dollar store, so I may do that as well. I'm going to paint mine, so if you want, you can take the glass frames out. I'm going to leave mine in because if you do get paint on glass, it's really easy to clean off with a razor blade, and I'm just going to be careful with painting. So since I'm leaving that in there, I'm going to fold the little tabs down. Since we got rid of some of that space, the glass might still be a little loose. So if you want to make sure it's really secure, you could use a little dab of hot glue. I'm not too worried about it. This is good enough for me. Also, fun fact about glass, on a microscopic level, it's actually really rough. That's why if you have 2 glass dishes nested together and you pull them apart, sometimes they feel like they're kind of snagging and grabbing. That's why, because microscopically glass is actually really rough. And while we're on the topic of glass, do be careful when you're using it, especially these ones from the dollar store. They can have really sharp edges, so just be very careful that you don't accidentally hurt yourself. And I have it in my head that somebody somewhere might make picture frames with, instead of a glass surface, with a plastic surface. I feel like in my childhood I bought little picture frames from the Target dollar section, and instead of glass it was plastic on the front, but I could be wrong. But if picture frames with a plastic piece instead of a glass piece are an option, then that might be worth trying to find for this project, just so that way you don't have to worry about glass shattering. If you have any spots like this, you can use a razor blade to carefully clean that off. Since the tab broke off on this one, I'm going to put a little dab of hot glue just to make sure that this frame doesn't move. So now our frames are just about ready for assembly. One other thing I will mention is you may notice the little tab sticking through. For me personally, I wasn't too worried about that. That's not a big deal for me. I'm gonna leave it on the big ones. These little ones, you definitely notice it more. So if you wanted, you could bend them in half so you don't see them as much. I think I'm gonna leave them. I think it's kind of just adds a little bit of personality to the lantern. And of course, if you don't want the tabs at all, you could just hot glue the glass inside the frame. And now it is time for assembly. Got my hot glue gun heated up, and I'm gonna assemble them so that way I have this left piece standing upright, flat against the table, and then this piece will pop right against there. So I'm going to load this edge up with hot glue. And you don't want to add so much that it's squeezing out the sides, but do add enough so that we get a really strong, secure hold. Really important, make sure that the bottom is flush. Just applying pressure all the way down the side. Again, I'm going to put glue along this edge and then stand this piece up so it goes along the edge of this frame. This frame is going to fit on top of this one and flush with this one. So I'm going to load up this edge and this edge with glue, pick the whole thing up and set it on top of this frame. You will want to work fairly quickly so the hot glue doesn't cool down. Once you get it glued together, you'll end up with a little something like this. Honestly, this is pretty cute if you stop here, especially if you use smaller picture frames. But we're going to keep going and we're going to add a roof to our lantern. To add the roof, I'm going to take my two smaller frames and glue them together at a right angle. And then I'm going to take this piece and glue it to the top of my lantern box. Before you start gluing, make sure to check your fit, and in my case it lines up really nicely. So to glue this, I'm going to run hot glue down this edge, and then pop my roof right onto the lantern. Now as you can see, the hot glue got a little messy. We're gonna let it cool, and then these drops will be able to just, well, okay, you need to let it cool first. But once it cools, you'll be able to just pop these little sections off. And then the glue along here, I'm just gonna take the tip of my hot glue gun and run it along there to melt it smooth. Now that it's assembled, I'm gonna put a coat or two of paint on there. I'm gonna start with this indoor-outdoor apple barrel acrylic paint as a base coat, and then I've got this metallic bright red that I'm gonna dry brush on there. I'm obviously not intentionally getting any paint on the glass, but if it does, it's not a big deal because you can use a razor blade to really easily scrape that up once it dries. Oh, mini pumpkin! Yay! You of course could have painted your frames before assembling, but I like painting them afterwards because then I can just paint right over the glue and it hides it really well. And you of course don't have to paint your frames, you can just start with frames where you already like the color. I just decided that I wanted to paint mine so that way I could customize it, and also because it was really hard to find frames that matched and that were the style I was going for. So then I had this metallic paint that's labeled bright red, and with this paint I wanted to do a dry brush technique. This is basically where you squeeze a little bit of paint out, you use a rough bristle brush, get just a little bit of paint, dab most of the paint off, and then just brush back and forth really lightly on your project, and it gives it this more weathered kind of dry brushed look. And you've probably seen me and lots of other YouTubers and DIYers do this dry brush technique on lots of projects. And the reason why I and so many others like this technique so much is because it is so forgiving. It's like almost impossible to mess up. If your first coat of paint wasn't that smooth, no worries. The dry brush technique makes it all blend in. It makes all the accidents look purposeful. Now the packaging has a little bit of a pink tone, but the sticker on the lid looked red. But yeah, my lantern did not turn out red. It turned out pink and shimmery. I think for now I'm gonna leave it. I may try to find some actual red paint, or maybe I'll have to go buy some. But yeah, this definitely took it a little bit different direction than I was going with it. It's still super cute, but it wasn't quite what I was envisioning. But we're gonna roll with it and see where we end up. I might throw some more paint onto the lantern later on if I decide that, yeah, I really don't care for the pink tone. So we want to get rid of any little bits of paint. And for this, I'm going to use a razor blade. Just really lightly and carefully scrape the paint off the glass. If you're using an acrylic paint, it'll come off no problem. So then another thing I wanted to do to decorate this was to use some chalk markers, and my idea with the chalk markers is I can draw little pumpkins, or I can draw like a lattice pattern on there, and this way I can shift it from fall to winter to spring really easily. So I picked these up at Hobby Lobby. I'm going to add my design. You can do this however you want. I've got a couple different ideas I'm thinking about, but I think I'm gonna do a really basic, just kind of lattice pattern. And the nice thing about the chalk pens is you can change it out over and over again. If there's anything you decide you don't like, you can always just wipe it off. But now all that's left is to put this out somewhere and decorate with it. So here is the finished lantern, and as a bonus, here are 6 ways to decorate with this lantern. First, you can use this as welcome decor. I put a house number on the top, wrote welcome on the front, and added some decorative illustrations. Of course, that isn't my actual house number, in case you were wondering. The second idea is to fill the lantern with pine cones. With my size picture frames, I had plenty of room at the top to add small pine cones, but if your pine cones are too big, you could place them on the ground and then set your lantern over top it. Or, instead of gluing the roof on, you could attach it with a hinge. You can purchase small hinges from a hardware store, or you could use the hinges from the backs of the picture frame stands. A third way to decorate with this lantern is to use mini pumpkins. You can combine the pumpkins with the previous pinecone look, or use them as a standalone. It would also look absolutely adorable if you filled the entire lantern with pumpkins. And crochet pumpkins would work too. Fourth, you can put a candle inside your lantern. Just make sure that your candle can vent and won't melt or burn the frames. If you don't want to run the risk of a fire hazard, an artificial candle would be a great solution. So then my last 2 ideas will help transition this decor into Christmas and the winter season. I used a white chalk pen to draw a snowy landscape. I drew really lightly to create fields of snow, added some trees, and covered the rest with snowflakes. My sixth and final idea is to fill the lantern with Christmas ornaments. This would look super cute if it were hanging, and of course if you hang this you would need to attach a bottom so your ornaments don't fall out. You could glue one of the back cardboard pieces from a picture frame to create a bottom. Then you could cut out a metal ring from a dollar store wreath into a C shape and attach that to either side of your lantern and hang it up. So there you have it, that is the DIY picture frame lantern and 6 ideas on how to decorate with it. I hope y'all enjoyed this project and the ideas on how to decorate it, and make sure to let me know in the comments how you would decorate with one of these lanterns. And while you're here, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. I will see you in my next video. Happy crafting!